back up where we left off yesterday with our story, The Scholarship Jacket. Can anybody remind me what this story is about? Yes, sir.
It's about a girl who wants a scholarship jacket, but maybe she has to go through some obstacles to get that jacket, and maybe she might get it.
Okay, very good. So remember the outcome, our learning outcome is we're going to read the story, we are going to make inferences and determine the point of view. Okay, so let's pick back up and read part 2. If you look on your paper, that starts where it says in May. So you follow along as I read aloud. In May, close to graduation, spring fever struck, and no one paid any attention in class. Instead, we stared out the windows and at each other, wanting to speed up the last few weeks of school. I despaired every time I looked in the mirror. Pencil thin, not a curve anywhere. I was called Beanpole and String Bean, and I knew that's what I looked like. A flat chest, no hips, and a brain. That's what I had. That really isn't much for a 14-year-old to work with, I thought, as I absent-mindedly wandered from my history class in the gym. Another hour of sweating in basketball and displaying my toothpick legs was coming up. Then I remembered my PE shorts were still in a bag under my desk where I'd forgotten them. I had to walk all the way back and get them. Coach Thompson was a real bear if anyone wasn't dressed for PE. She had said I was a good forward, and once she even tried to talk Grandma into letting me join the team. Grandma, of course, said no. I was almost back at my classroom's door when I heard angry voices and arguing. I stopped. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just hesitated, not knowing what to do. I needed those shorts and I was going to be late. But I didn't want to interrupt an argument between my teachers. I recognized the voices. Mr. Smith, my history teacher, and Mr. Boone, my math teacher. They seemed to be arguing about me. I couldn't believe it. I still remember the shock that rooted me flat against the wall, as if I were trying to blend in with the graffiti written there. I refuse to do it. I don't care who her father is. Her grades don't even begin to compare to Martha's. I won't lie or falsify records. Martha has a straight A+ average, and you know it. That was Mr. Smith, and he sounded very angry. Mr. Boone's voice sounded calm and quiet. Look, Joanne's father is not only on the board, he owns the only store in town. We could say it was a close tie, and the pounding in my ears drowned out the rest of the words. Only a word here and there filtered through. Martha's Mexican. Resign. Won't do it. Mr. Smith came rushing out. Luckily for me, he went down the opposite way toward the auditorium, so he didn't see me. Shaking, I waited a few minutes and then went in and grabbed my bag and fled from the room. Mr. Boone looked up when I came in but didn't say anything. To this day, I don't remember if I got in trouble in PE for being late or how I made it through the rest of the afternoon. I went home very sad and cried into my pillow that night so what grandmother wouldn't hear me. It seemed a cruel coincidence that I had overheard that conversation. So let's go to our Google slide and answer a few questions about what we just read. While we're doing this, I want you thinking about what you read and seeing if you have any questions. Remember, you're still being the sidekick. Alright, it says, on your paper, underline the reasons Mr. Smith thinks Martha should have the jacket. Can anybody tell me what paragraph that's in? Max, what paragraph is it in?
Paragraph 4, and it says
Okay.
Martha has a straight A+ average.
Okay, very good. Isn't that a pretty good reason to give somebody a scholarship?
Yes.
Okay. Now it says on your paper, circle Mr. Boone's reason for giving the jacket to Joanne. Why does Mr. Boone think Joanne needs it? Maybe she doesn't deserve it, but why does he think she needs it? All right, Hunter.
In paragraph 5 it says, look, Joanne's father is not only on the board, he owns the only store in town.
Okay, so is that really a good reason for someone to get a scholarship jacket? Because her daddy's on the board and he owns the only store in town.
No.
Did she truly earn it based on her grades?
No.
She may have had good grades, but does it really sound like she has as good a grades as Martha? No. Yes, Anna B.
I was just kind of gonna say, like, one of those questions would be like, if they're in like the Mexican region where they don't graduate, or when they graduate in the 8th grade, why would it matter that she is Mexican and all? Like, because they were arguing about that.
Some of them do, some of them don't, you know. It's just different time and different place, kind of. Okay. She's a minority. All of them at the school probably are not minorities. Okay, this may not have taken place in a Mexican region. I don't know. It didn't really tell us that. It's just Texas, which is in the United States. This could be some type of private academy, like we were against this weekend in math competition. So there's different reasons why that could be a very important piece to this. But does it truly tell us why that's so important? No. Yes, sir.
In paragraph 4 it says, her grades don't even begin to compare against Martha's.
Right. So Joanne's nowhere near, obviously, as smart as Martha. Okay? Alright, let's go to our next question. Who do you think deserves to win the scholarship jacket in life? Go ahead and type your answer. Now, the name of this girl is Martha in the story. What was the author's name?
Martha.
Martha, right? So she changed her name in the story a little bit, right? It's actually Martha. Give me a thumbs up when you have that question answered. All right, Isaac, what did you say? Who do you think deserves the scholarship jacket?
I think Martha should get the scholarship because she has better grades than Joan.
Okay, Martha, because she has better grades than Joanne. How many of you agree with him? Does anybody disagree with him? If you do, that's fine. Okay. Yes.
Why is it like the people talking? Why is he saying like just because Joanne's father's on the board and has the only shop in town that she gets it?
Good question. It's kind of based on who you are in society. Some people, I'm trying to put this in a way y'all understand. Some people choose kids to do things based on who their parents are. Their parents may be a doctor. Like they said here, her parent was on the Board of Education. Meaning basically they control their job, a lot of it. It's not the right thing to do, but it's choosing based on their status in society, not what they've earned. Unfortunately, our world has come to this a lot. You have to be careful with that, not choosing people, and y'all do it as friends sometimes. Y'all look down at people, and I'm not saying you guys do, because they may not have as much money as you. Some people do, okay? They may be a different race as you. Some people look down on people for that, okay? And you may not choose them as your best friend because they're not like you. And that's kind of what happened here. They were saying, well, she's Mexican, okay? But yet she had the grades. She deserved it. Where Joanne, she just had a daddy who was somebody, okay, and owned a shop in town. You see what I mean? That's a very good question to ask, though. All right, let's go ahead and look at our next question. It says, how do you think the argument between Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Boone makes Martha feel? Go ahead and type your answer. How do you think it makes Martha feel? Keep in mind that I'm always looking at your Chromebooks. Got them up on GoGuardian. Does it tell us directly in the story how it makes her feel? No. So you are making a what? Inference. You're using what is given to us in the story, what you know about people's feelings, and making an inference. A lot of times, guys, you make inferences without even realizing you're doing it. You do it all day, every day. You don't realize what you're doing. So, who wants to tell me? How do you think the argument made her feel? Rance?
Sad because she realized how society was nowadays.
Okay, sad. Peyton?
I think it made Martha disappointed.
Disappointed. Very good. Annabelle?
Upset because she looks down on herself because she's not, like, even though she's smart, her dad doesn't do, she's Mexican and she's different, and that's why she can't have it.
Right. Does she have as much money as this girl probably does?
No.
Mm-mm.
I think it makes Martha upset because Mr. Smith is basically calling her a nobody.
Unfortunately, he is basically, right? He's saying Joanne deserves it because she's a somebody. Yes, I think.
I think it makes me feel a little sad because one of her teachers is arguing against her and thinking she should not get the scholarship benefit.
Right. One of them's got her back, right? And is fighting for her. Where the other one, he really doesn't care what's right and wrong.
It's Mr. Schmidt that's fighting for it.
Exactly, Mr. Schmidt's fighting for her. All right, let's move on. Let's go to part 3. Starts with the next day. It says, the next day when the principal called me into the office, I knew what it would be about. He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it easier for him, so I looked him straight in the eye. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. Martha, he said, there's been a change in policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket. As you know, it has always been free. He cleared his throat and continued. This year, the board decided to charge $15, which still won't cover the complete cost of the jacket. I stared at him in shock, and a small sound of dismay escaped my throat. I hadn't expected this. He still avoided looking in my eyes. So, why do you think the principal is unhappy here? Go ahead and type your answer. Why do you think the principal is unhappy? No, Martha's still listening. Joanne's the girl who has the daddy who's somebody in society. She's probably a rich girl. Okay. Name. Well, if you, in the imprint, it says there's been a change this year. As you know, it's always been free. But it said above that, he looked very uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I was going to make it easier for him. Why do you think he's unhappy with the news he's going to have to tell her? This is all about making an inference, guys. You're having to use what it says. It says, he looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it easier for him, so I looked him straight in the eye. Okay, why is he unhappy and uncomfortable? Lauren?
Okay, I think that like the teachers went to him because they got so upset about it that they went to him, and then the teacher disagreed with the teacher that thought that Joanne should get the. The principal disagreed with the teacher that thought Martha should get the jacket,
Okay.
and he agreed that because she was Mexican that they might get her the jacket.
Okay. Alright, Anna B.
But because he knows that she has earned it, but they have to come up with an excuse. Like he knows that she really does have the best grades, but they have to come up with something so that there's a reason to give it to someone else.
Right, exactly. He's unhappy because he's about to have to tell her, hey, we came up with this $15 thing because do you think they know she can't afford it?
Yes.
And so they came up with that little, hey, you're going to have to pay for it. It's no longer free. Why do you think they came up with that?
So she couldn't get.
So she couldn't get the jacket. And so who would then get the jacket?
Joanne.
Joanne. But were they actually just giving it to her? No. Because Martha couldn't pay for it, who gets it? The next person in line, which is, and did she truly deserve it?
No.
No. Yes, ma'am.
I think the principal is unhappy because Joanne's father is on the board, so he's the principal's boss. So he has to do what Joanne's father says, and Joanne's father says, make her pay for this
Okay.
because I don't want my daughter.
Okay, I could see that. All right, let's keep going. So what caused Martha to feel dismayed? I left out a word, sorry. Why did she feel dismayed? First off, who can tell me what dismayed means? Anybody know? France?
Unhappy, uncomfortable.
Okay, very good. So what caused her to feel dismayed? It said, I stared at him in shock, and a small sound of dismay escaped my throat. What did she realize? Okay, type it in and we'll talk about it here in a second. Alright, Max, why do you think, what caused her to feel dismayed?
Because the jacket is $15 and she can't afford it now.
Right. She's realizing, I can't afford that jacket. So, is she going to get it?
No.
No. How would that make you feel? Turn and talk to your elbow plan. How would it make you feel if you knew you deserved something but you didn't get it because of who you were? I know, it's usually spelled with an E on the end. But it's alright. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Rhea, how would that make you feel?
It would make me feel disappointed.
Right. Guys, think about when you're choosing people for teams like baseball or kickball. Don't you usually go for the most athletic people?
Yes.
No, she said she's like a little shrimp. They call her string bean. Do you think she's very athletic?
No.
No. So do you think she's chosen first
No.
for sports stuff? No.
But they said that.
So that kind of goes, I mean, she's already probably down and out on herself. And now this, the one thing she has going for herself, which is her academics, she's not going to be rewarded for. It's ripped away from her. Because of someone being unfair. Okay? Alright, so let's look at our last question. It says, why do you think the principal avoids looking at Martha?
That thing's scared to crap. There's a roach on my
Just
Chromebook.
knock it off. It's alright. He's not going to hurt you.
I know it's scared to crap.
Okay. Why does the principal avoid looking at Martha? Type it in. Think about when people won't look you in the eye, what are they most likely doing? Josie?
Do I have to tell you like bad news or something?
Do you think they're telling you the truth? You do? If somebody won't look you in the eye, do you think they're telling you the truth?
No.
No. How do you think teachers usually figure out if you're lying to them or not? You're not looking them in the eye. You're looking down. You're looking up. You may be looking to the side. Usually, if you're telling the truth, you'll look somebody in the eye. Okay? So most likely, the reason he won't look her in the eye is because he's lying to her, right? Could they have just given her the jacket because she deserved it?
Yeah.
But they came up with this new rule. Alright, let's go ahead and go to part 4. And let's read it. Follow along as I read it aloud. Standing with all the dignity I could muster, I said, "I'll speak to my grandfather about it, sir, and let you know tomorrow." I cried on the walk home from the bus stop. The dirt road was a quarter of a mile from the highway, so by the time I got home, my eyes were red and puffy. "Where's Grandpa?" I asked Grandma, looking down at the floor so she wouldn't ask me why I'd been crying. She was sewing on a quilt and didn't look up. "I think he's out back working in the bean field." I went outside and looked out at the fields. There he was. I could see him walking between the rows, his body bent over the little plants, hoe in hand. I walked slowly out to him, trying to think of how I could best ask him for the money. There was a cool breeze blowing and the sweet smell of mesquite in the air, but I didn't appreciate it. I kicked at a dirt clod. I wanted that jacket so much. It was more than just being a valedictorian and giving a little thank you speech for the jacket on graduation night. It represents 8 years of hard work and expectation. I knew I had to be honest with Grandpa. It was my only chance. He saw me and looked up. He waited for me to speak. I cleared my throat nervously and clasped my hands behind my back so he wouldn't see them shaking. "Grandpa, I have a big favor to ask you," I said in Spanish, the only language he knew. He still waited silently. I tried again. Grandpa, this year the principal said the scholarship jacket is not going to be free. It's going to cost $15 and I have to take the money tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be given to someone else. The last words came out in an eager rush. Grandpa straightened up tiredly and leaned his chin on the hoe handle. He looked out over the field that was filled with tiny green bean plants. I waited, desperately hoping he'd say I could have the money. He turned to me and asked quietly, "What does a scholarship jacket mean?" So, let's look at our question up here. What are your own thoughts about Martha as she takes her problem to her grandfather? How are you feeling? Do you have questions for her about what she might say to grandfather? Do you feel bad for her? Do you feel happy for her? Make sure you're typing it in on your Google slide. Because remember what he asked her. He hadn't said anything to her. He said, "What does a scholarship jacket mean?" Can anybody tell me what a scholarship is?
The scholarship nowadays is whenever, if you get one, then you can get either a year to a full ride in college.
Okay, so something's being given to you, right? Are you paying for it? So what do you think he means by, what is a scholarship jacket? Well, we know a scholarship means something's given to you. So what do you think is going through Grandpa's mind? A scholarship jacket should be what?
Free.
Free.
Scholarships are.
Because scholarships are free. But are they just handed out on a silver platter to anybody who wants them? What do you have to do to get a scholarship?
Earn them.
Earn them. Work hard for them. And she has worked hard all 8 years of school. So do you think she has earned it?
Yes.
And don't you think that's what Grandpa's thinking? Okay. So who can tell me what your thoughts are? Uh-huh.
I think that she is going to get the jacket.
You think she's going to get the jacket? Okay, you think he's going to say yes?
I mean, he's probably gonna try to prove his case first.
Okay.
So because the scholarships are free.
Okay.
I feel bad for her because she's poor. She will most likely not get the money.
Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and read the next part quickly. It's almost time for us to change back. It says, I answered quickly. Maybe there was a chance. It means you've earned it by having the highest grades for 8 years. And that's why they're giving it to you. Too late. I realized the significance of my words. Grandpa knew that I understood it was not a matter of money. It wasn't that. He went back to hoeing the weeds that sprang up between the dedicated little bean plants. It was time-consuming. Sometimes the small shoots were right next to each other. Finally, he spoke again. Then if you pay for it, Marta, it's not a scholarship jacket, is it? Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. I walked back to the house and locked myself in the bathroom for a long time. I was angry with Grandfather, even though I know he was right. And I was angry with the board, whoever they were. Why did they have to change the rules just when it was my turn to win the jacket? It was a very sad and withdrawn girl who dragged into the principal's office the next day. This time, he did look me in the eyes. What did your grandfather say? I sat very straight in my chair. He said to tell you he won't pay the $15. The principal muttered something I couldn't understand under his breath. and walked over to the window. He stood looking out at something outside. He looked bigger than usual when he stood up. He was a tall, gaunt man with gray hair, and I watched the back of his head while I waited for him to speak. What are you thinking right now? Who can tell me? What's going through your brain? Honey?
That he's going to change the world.
Why do you think that?
Because he's having such a hard time not giving her the jacket.
Okay. Alright, so we're going to stop here for today. I want you to think about what we just read and about what Hunter said. Do you think something's going to change? Do you think she's going to get her jacket? Okay? We will finish reading it tomorrow. Good job today. Go ahead and close your Chromebooks. Rhea is going to take up your papers and we will get ready to change.